Well, good morning. This is Lou Benninger, and welcome. Beautiful day out there today. Unbelievable. I was just reading where a couple of years ago when we had a tremendous drought, in fact, people had actually forgotten how to spell the term rain. They hadn't seen it for so many years, and people are wondering whether they're still going to get water when they turned on the faucet. And then a prophet came to Church of Glad Tidings right in the middle of the drought, and he was speaking on an entirely unrelated topic and stopped right in the middle, and he said, there will be a miracle, and the dams will overflow with water. There's going to be all kinds of water. I thought, that is going to be unbelievable, because I had actually lost confidence that it was ever going to rain. And so, lo and behold, as a story goes, in March of that following year, I think this is like in October, November, we should have been getting all kinds of rain through that December, or through that winter. And in March, it just cut loose. You remember, they called it the March Miracle. It's interesting, the term that the secular newspapers used up and down California. They call it the March Miracle. And we had this overabundance of water and snow up on the Sierra Nevada mountains. So I was looking today at the paper or on the internet, and they said we're having another March Miracle. And here it is, where it's sunny down here and it's blossoming. Like the orange tree at the next door neighbors was blossoming, and it was all smelling like I put on a fresh batch of underarm deodorant. And it said that in March, the snowpack, the water content of the snowpack went from like 25% of normal to 73% of normal in just 30 days. Isn't that amazing? So it doesn't have to always be raining in the valley to be helping us, because if it clouds up and gets it on up there in the Sierra Nevada, that's just like money in the bank up there. So hallelujah to you. We got a March Miracle. That's good. I was thanking God for that, because I've been, ever since that drought, I thought, you know something, I need to like pay attention and pray about this stuff. I always tell the guys in Yuba County Jail, I ask them if they like to drink water, and I said, if they do, maybe they ought to think more about where we get the water. We need some water. So happy day to you, and Wikiman are out here, but we're out here, we're kind of faking you out, because we're out here in the middle of the night. So that only difference that means is you can't call in and chat at us. You can leave a message for the big kahuna, Tom Huth, and you can leave it good or bad. It's fine with me, but we won't be able to talk to you this time. We'll be back, I think, live next week. Correcto? Yeah, next week we'll be live. So we just want to let you know that it's fresh stuff. We're out here on Friday night, the night before the day of the event. So you could also go on to One Eye Blind Media, where you'll find it. It's a YouTube channel, One Eye Blind Media, and just click on whatever show you want to listen to of this program, Live with Lou. And you can also, hopefully the simulcast will work tomorrow. You can go on your website at kmycradio.com and listen live there as well, and get a better reception if you're down there towards Sacramento or out to the edges of Butte County or Colusa County and maybe Nevada County, and you can't hear as well as we can right here. So if you listen on YouTube or you listen on simulcast, it's nice and clear. So it's the day. I thought today was the last day of March. I lost my mind, and there's 31 days in March, so that's on when I say today or tonight when we're broadcasting. Tomorrow, Saturday's the 31st of the end of the month. But I noticed this because I'm a guy that all his friends went to the Vietnam War. I didn't get sent over there, but a lot of my friends did, and some of them in the Yuba Sutter area died in Vietnam. And the reason I'm bringing that up today, you think, why are you bringing that up now? And it's because this week, March 29th, was declared Vietnam Veterans Day. And it was declared to be so in 2012 by President Barack Obama. And then Donald Trump last year kind of redid it and said this is Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act That's what he signed of 2017, honoring March 29th as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Now, this is a war that a lot of Americans were just totally embittered about, and it nearly caused a revolution in the United States, and actually that's what caused the end to the war, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, but I just wanted to remind you what the war cost us, and I didn't, not in dollars and cents, but in people. So when we got into the war, after the French decided to leave, I'm going to explain why in a minute, but by the time we got out of it in 1975, 304,000 service men and women were wounded, more than 304,000. In fact, I went down with my friend Rick Carlson, who had survived over there, and we went to down to San Francisco, where a military friend of his had gotten both legs blown off. So he was about my age. He's about 20, and he had no legs. And that was a real sober reminder to me of what my friends were going through. I had a guy in Steve Sneller, who was a local guy at Marysville High School, ran track. I think he was over there just a very short time and was killed. So there were more than 58,000 servicemen and women killed, and there are estimates that 250,000 servicemen and women today still suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or what they used to call battle fatigue. So any war, no matter what war it was, takes a heavy toll. You think people come back from the war and they go back to work at a factory or a hardware store or a construction company and think, well, they're the same person. They really aren't the same person ever again. They never do get back to that normal person they were before they went to war. So that happened. And the sad thing was that men and women who came back from that war were despised, mocked, spit at, cussed at, and that did not help trying to come back and adjust to American society again. Many people think that it just cost us lots of money and lots of people and killed lots of Vietnamese, and that's all we accomplished there. But the fact is, life is not a utopia. And though you'd want to just say, why can't, like Rodney King says, why can't we just all get along? People, particularly political leaders, get some bean up their nose and want to cause a big thing. So if you'll notice, in the early 1900s, we had an overthrow of Russia, which was called communism. And the next came to China, and that happened in 1949. And then from that time, that was right after, of course, World War II ended in 1945. And communism really spread at the end of World War II as Russia had worked with the United States to defeat Hitler. But Russia, the territories that Russia had defeated the Nazis, they did not want to surrender their areas. And they said, we're keeping those areas. And that was a surprise, at least to most Americans. And so those areas that the Russians had sort of freed from the Nazis, they kept them under communism, Eastern Europe and onward eastward. And so Dwight Eisenhower, who became president after the war and was the Allied leader of all the forces, he knew something about communists, and he said he discussed and came up with what they called the domino theory, that if you did not defend against communism, in fact, in the early 50s, you already had Korea, the revolution happening in Korea, and they finally divided that country in half. So you had Germany cut in half, and you had Korea cut in half. And people today, even in America, they are geopolitically ignorant. They think that Vietnam is cut in half. When I come and go go back and forth to Vietnam. So Dwight Eisenhower said, listen, we need to stand tall against communism. Otherwise, it's going to take over countries to the south of China, and that's what they call Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and then south of that, most people don't realize this, but Indonesia is when we think of Muslims, you think of like Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, etc., right? Indonesia is the largest populated Muslim country. More Muslims are in Indonesia than any other country in the world. Let me say it that way. That's more clearer. Let me just say that again. Indonesia's, I think it's got about 17,000 islands. Not all of them are inhabited, but they're inhabited by lots of Muslims. Largest Muslim country in the world. But at that time, there was a lot of communists as well. And the leader of the Communist Party in Indonesia had gone to Mao Zedong and said, listen, you have this war going on and you're helping this war in Vietnam. We believe we can overthrow Indonesia, which would give Russia, China, it's the most populated country. India was also having trouble with communists, so that's the top two populated countries. Then you have Russia as another big country, but Indonesia was the fourth largest populated country in the world, and they had a big communist movement there. And this was in the mid-'60s, early to mid-'60s. And the leader of the Communist Party went to the Chinese and said, listen, if you'll fund us, we have a plan to overthrow the government. And at that time, there was a President Sukarno. And it was President Sukarno, and then he had just like we have a president, and then we have all these military leaders. And there was the communists said to the leader of the Chinese communists said to the Indonesian communists, we're not going to get involved over there. We do not believe, we can't financially do another war like this, and we don't believe you can militarily take over the world. We found out in Vietnam that's too costly, and we're not going to do that. And history tells this story, but I also have a friend, my friend Phil, who married a Chinese woman who was raised and got her degree in China, and her dad was one of the top military leaders in China, confirmed this exact story that the Chinese had decided that they learned their lesson in Vietnam. Even though Vietnam went communist, it started with half of it, then it took over the whole thing when we quit. It wouldn't have gone communist if we wouldn't have quit. But because of the revolution, the movement in the United States by liberals, we left. And we turned over the entire country, and millions of Vietnamese were murdered by their friends from the north. In other words, Vietnamese killed Vietnamese, just like a civil war we had. But what happened was in Indonesia, the Chinese turned them down, and so the Indonesians, communists, decided we're going to do this anyway. And they planned to, they heard a rumor that the military junta, there was about 10 or 12 military leaders, were going to take over the government from Sukarno, a coup. So they thought, if they're going to do that, we're going to kill them. We're going to get them in one place, find them in one place, murder them, and then we're going to take over the country. The communists wanted the entire nation of Indonesia to move left politically. So they made a move, and they killed six of the leaders. But they missed some of them. All of them didn't show up where they were supposed to at the same time. And so one of the top leaders, named not Sukarno, but Suharto, a military leader, and some of the others went on the radio and made a declaration for all the people in Indonesia. It's like in America, everybody's got duct tape in their drawer. Well, in Indonesia, everybody packs machetes. It's just a handy tool to have around. You want to whack open a coconut, or you want to whack off the head of a chicken. Machetes are popular in Indonesia. So he said, grab your machetes and kill every communist neighbor you can find. They said literally blood ran in the streets. 500,000. That's 500,000 for you out there in Olivehurst and Linda. That's like almost the population of Sacramento back 20 years ago. I want you to think about that. 500,000 people died over a period of months. They just kept killing them and killing them and killing them. If they even had a C on their sweatshirt, they killed them. Anybody rumored to be a communist or not a Muslim, they killed them. And so you think, oh, the Vietnam War didn't accomplish jack. Yes, it did. It stopped probably the fourth largest nation in the world, besides the first largest populated. China had already gone communist. Russia, which has now taken over all of Eastern Europe, all the Yugoslavia, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, had just taken over all those countries. You remember that, how big that was? Soviet Union, now they call it Russia, and all those countries spun back off. What happened is the Vietnam War, because of our resistance to the communists for over 10 years, it threw the Chinese into a tailspin on wanting to go toe-to-toe militarily in all these little countries down there through Southeast Asia. Now, Laos is still communist. People are all confused. Like I say, Americans are geopolitically illiterate. Laos is still very strongly communist. Cambodia, which had Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, they were overthrown by, of all people, the Vietnamese. But they went and they've established a different type of government. It's not communist anymore. But in all these countries, millions and millions of civilians were murdered, and they were tortured, murdered, buried alive, hung. It was radical. The Hmong people that came to the United States, over 100,000 Hmong people were murdered in Laos and Vietnam. So we lost over 58,000 military folks. The Hmong lost over 100,000 just folks, military and just people, women and children. And so today, the reason I talk about this is because we're honoring, although we're a day late, the veterans that served and really got disrespected, maligned, and because of the left-wing people, liberals in this country, they create what we call revisionist history. They twist the facts, or they don't know what they're talking about. And so they made it look like the Vietnam War was a total waste. Was it costly? Yeah, but look at what's happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, World War II. We can go all the way around the world. You know, it'd be nice if people just quit murdering people and butchering people and cutting their heads off like ISIS. It'd be nice if everybody just like went home and sang Kumbaya and busted out the sugar cookies, but they're not pulling that off. So we end up involved in these situations. People appeal to us to save them. That's what happens a lot. And that's what happened in the Vietnam War. And so if you see a veteran around and he's got one of those caps on that says Vietnam War, why don't you stop him and shake his hand and say, you know something, I had no idea what that Vietnam War was about and the impact, the positive impact on stopping communism. By the way, if you out there that happen to be listening that are thinking communism's cool, I would recommend you visit. You know, it's kind of like they say, if you want to buy a house in the neighborhood, go over there and sleep in it one night and see how the neighborhood is. You might want to check out that neighborhood. I recommend to you that you visit Laos or communist China, or you do some reading. I was telling somebody today that if you need a kidney or a lung or a heart, the place to get one's China, because they have dissidents, like Christian dissidents, underground church dissidents that they have in jails and prisons, and Falun Gong, that's another spiritual pursuit. They have millions of those people, and when they need a heart or lung, they just match up the DNA between somebody that wants to pay for one and one that has one, and then they take them out back, and they just put them under and cut that part out of them, tell their relatives they died in prison, and sell the part for $50 or $100 or $200,000. I know you probably don't believe that. That's because you don't know what you're talking about. You just don't know that much. But I do. I know that much. So we're going to take a break here. It's time to take a break, and we'll be right back. We got 2.5 hours to go, and don't go away. All right, welcome back. This is Live with Lou. And as I mentioned earlier, we're pre-recording on Friday night for Saturday. So if you want to call in, you can leave a message, but we won't get it. We won't be able to get it live or chat with you this Saturday, but hope you enjoy the show. And there's a new show coming up at Sunday, right? Wikiman, is it 1 to 3? 1 to 3? And they're going to talk about local politics, and you may or may not know the folks involved. In fact, if you're out in these other counties, 4 or 5 other counties we reach, you may not know them, but I know them, and they're good people, and they're sharp people. In fact, we just had Tammy Reichard on the show. She was advertising and talking about the constitutional sheriff seminar they had recently. And so she and her husband, Jason, and a fellow named Tom Burns and Bill Beeler, who has been very active with the Tea Party Patriots, Sutter Beach Tea Party Patriots. They're going to be here, and they're going to do a weekly show on Sunday from 1 to 3. So if that's a time slot that you'd like to listen to what's shaking, you could get involved. So I encourage you to do that. Since we're talking about that as well, the Sutter Beach Tea Party Patriots, which supports this show, you know, it takes some money to be on this show. They don't. The big kahuna that runs this show, this station, even though he's very wealthy, he doesn't give me any money, and so we pay him to be out here. Now that's one smart cookie right there, right? We're working our fingers to the bone, me and Wikiman out here on a Friday night recording this, and all we're getting is a cup of coffee, a little water, a chance to use the toilet because the water's running, and some smoked almonds. That's it. So we're talking for food out here today. So the Tea Party Patriots are one of the groups that supports us out here. I got some other friends that do that as well. You'll hear them advertised on the show here. But the Tea Party Patriots meet twice a month on the first and third Mondays, and this Monday, April 2nd, they're going to have a candidates forum for Yuba County supervisor races. So one race is in District 1, which is, I think this station might be in District 1, and Andy's district, Andy Vasquez. Andy has a show just before this one, Andy Vasquez. He's being opposed by 2 folks, and David Joyce and Joan Saunders. And so there's 3 candidates for that seat. And then the District 5, that's up in the foothills for all you folks in the mountain area. And there is Randy Fletcher, who is the incumbent. And then there is, I'm just kind of scrambling around here to look at something. There is John Missler, who is the owner of the Territorial Dispatch, who at one time was supervisor of that same district for 4 years. He got appointed, and then he won the election, and then he got defeated later on, and has not been serving in that fashion for a number of years, but is now still a resident up there. And so he is going to, he's running against Randy Fletcher. So I am looking for the third candidate, and I'm just trying to get to the point where it actually describes who that third candidate is, and I'm almost there, and I think I'm going to be able to find it for you. The third candidate is Alton, A-L-T-O-N, Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. So you got Wright, Missler, Fletcher for the District 5 candidates in the foothills of Yuba County. That's in Northern California if you're listening from outer Slumbodia. And District 1 candidates, which is in Yuba County. and that's Andy Vasquez, David Joyce, and Joan Saunders. So I'm confident that the Tea Party Patriots will also host forums for the folks that are running over in Sutter County, since we're kind of a bi-county operation around here, to be honest about it. I'd be clear about it, I guess. So they're doing a real service for the community by conducting these forums, and also Church of Glad Tidings, where they conduct them. There's some nice facilities out there to have meetings. So they host or allow the Tea Party to utilize those facilities on the 1st and 3rd, and it starts at 6:30. You can get in at 6, and so you don't have to belong, you don't have to join, you don't have to pay anything. It's a community service by the Sutter Butte Tea Party Patriots. So go check it out. And I'll talk about another organization that I like that is helpful in my neighborhood, in fact, and that's the Elite Universal Security. I'll talk about them in a bit, but I want to go and talk about the Jim Whittaker case some, and let me see if I can get to the right spot here. The Jim Whittaker case, which is a supervisor in Sutter County, and he has been a physical education teacher for Yuba City Unified School District for more than 20 years. And what happened was he was accused recently, I think it was in January, by a young lady in a PE class of grabbing her, kneeing her and grabbing her bottom. And that kind of set off it was sort of a tipping point of folks that began to complain that it had happened to them, one of those Me Too situations. And so there was a lawsuit filed. A couple lawsuits have been filed. One just was filed this week by the attorney from San Francisco representing this young lady, and then there's also a second lawsuit filed by a local attorney, Mike Trezza, for a girl that felt violated by the same teacher. She claims videoed her inappropriately from backside her bottom on down, and in physical education class. And that case has been filed against Whittaker and against the district. And so there's two suits at this point. And so the one suit that was filed by Mike Trezza, of the girl that had the video taken of her, has been, the situation has been being argued back and forth for a number of years, with the police not being interested in it, and Yuba City Police, and with the district not being interested in it. But finally, it got some traction, and it's finally going to go to court at some point. But that, along with this recent incident, has got some momentum, and the district did their own background work on this and hired their legal people, and the district ended up, all these school districts have their own attorneys reserved. They have them on retainer. And so the attorneys began to look at these accusations against Jim Whittaker, and they said there's plenty of evidence here, and I think they were unbiased. I don't think the school wants to get into a fight with somebody that's going to cost them a lot of money, which it does. On all these situations, costs a lot of money to defend or pursue them. If you want to kick a teacher out or keep a teacher, they all cost money. So the district ended up recommending that he be terminated, and in fact terminated him. He has appeal rights, which he's exercising those rights. But the interesting thing this week is that an attorney out of San Francisco that specializes in these types of cases, came to town and did a news conference. I believe it was on Wednesday, on the front steps of the courthouse. And I'm trying to get to it here if I can get my computer to scroll down here, because I want to just highlight a few items that he highlights, that he's just not filing the suit on behalf of one incident. But his argument is that there's been a series of incidents for 20 years that the district has been informed about, but has done nothing about, at least didn't, where they knew about it and said they knew about it, they didn't act appropriately. And so he's got quite a lawsuit. I read through the paperwork, and I'm trying to scroll down, and my computer's really giving me a hard time right now. So this suit involves a number of players. It involves more than one superintendent of schools. It involves more than one principal. It involves directors of personnel. It involves people that are mandated reporters. You know, when you're a mandated reporter, if you don't follow through even on a suspicion, you don't have to have proof, you just have suspicion. If you don't report stuff, you can go to jail and you can be fined. So I'm having a tough time finding this. Oh, here we go. So this guy, this attorney, and I'll tell you his name in a minute. My computer is not wanting to move through this. It's a 30-some page lawsuit. So he lists he's got a number of victims that he's interviewed all the way back to the 1990s. Okay? So he's not only, the case he's arguing is not over just his client, but this systematic ignorance of the law to protect children. So he says in 1993, a victim was assaulted by Whitaker. In 1994 and 95, another victim was assaulted by Whitaker, this case says. In 1997, another victim was assaulted by Whitaker. These are all people that have come forward since these two young women have come forward recently. Also in 1997, a victim was assaulted and treated in a sexually inappropriate manner on 2 different occasions by Whitaker. Whitaker rubbed the victim's breasts while she was working as a teacher's assistant for Whitaker's boys basketball team. Another student pinned the victim up against the wall and gave her a hickey while Whitaker watched and laughed. 1998, victim assaulted multiple times by Whitaker, according to the accusations in this lawsuit. When victim was upset about unrelated incident, Whitaker feigned empathy and reached out to victim ostensibly to comfort her, but instead groped her breast. Also in 1998, victim was grabbed by Whitaker in the butt outside the gymnasium. 1999, victim, a cheerleader at Yuba City High, was talking with Whitaker during her freshman year when Whitaker inexplicably began to repeatedly rub the side of her torso down to her hip. 1998, between 98 and 2001, victim assaulted by Whitaker. 2002, victim assaulted by Whitaker. 2003, another victim assaulted by Whitaker. 2013, victim asked Whitaker if she and friends could play with a volleyball in another corner of the gym. Whitaker angrily grabbed victim's left wrist, bent it behind her back, and sexually damaged her, according to her. 2014, group of victims felt uncomfortable having Whitaker as their physical education teacher, as he would do inappropriate things such as force them to do solo sets of jumping jacks in front of them. One of the girls received messages from Whitaker in which he indicated that he was interested in her and had her do weird things, according to her testimony. 2014, Whitaker inappropriately videoed. That's the one that also includes the other suit. This isn't by Trezza. This is the San Francisco attorney. No later than 1998 and possibly thereafter, administrators at Yuba City High and the district knew about Whitaker's inappropriate and abusive behavior. And he goes on and talks about, some of you remember Superintendent Willie Wong, who was involved in an incident 1998. So, this is all this week, and as is true of all teachers, they have a right to appeal through a panel, a judge plus two of their peers. It's very, very difficult to get a teacher fired. Usually those panels return the teacher to the school district to be placed in a different job. So we'll see whether his job is maintained. Also, a teacher, Steinman, failed to adequately respond to accusations about Whitaker's behavior and failed to report properly, and he's also named in the suit. Lots of people are named in the suit. Superintendent Asumi, Superintendent Auberg, Superintendent Willie Wong, the district, teachers that did not report inappropriate contact or conduct. So this is going to move forward. At the same time, this week, the recall petitions began circulating and throughout the community in Whitaker's district, which I'm been reminded is not the 5th district, but it's the 4th district. If you're interested in the attorney pursuing this second case that came to town this last week from the Bay Area, it's Paul Matiazik. And this is his specialty. So this week, there's a whole procedure. You know, if you want to recall someone from office, you don't have to have some sort of legal reason. You can just decide you don't like them. Though they got elected, you voted for them, and you don't like them, and you think if you recall them, this time you could vote them out. That's what happened to Art Brandwood when he ran for sheriff against Jim Whitaker's father, Roy Whitaker, and he beat him. He got over 60% of the vote, I think, but Roy Whitaker's friends were so incensed that a rookie candidate could beat their friend. And immediately, within 90 days, filed recall against Art Brandwood. And Art Brandwood basically had to run 2 campaigns in about 12 to 16 months and won both of them. So you can just decide you don't want somebody. So what happened is some of the people that have been involved in these accusations against Whitaker or their children have been violated by Mr. Whitaker, have now filed recall action and ran the papers into the, it has to go through the county clerk. In this case, it's Donna Johnston in Sutter County. And maybe over there in Nevada or Butte, you've seen this happen. Of course, if you're in the state of California very long, we recalled an entire governor, Gray Davis, a number of years ago. And so there was some concern over the fact that the paperwork that was turned in to the clerk, Donna Johnston, was not appropriately processed. In other words, there was some foot dragging going on. And in fact, Donna Johnston went to the county council to try to figure out a way how to stop the recall, from what I was told. And the county council says it's a legal process. And they followed all the rules to the letter, and they have a right to try this. Whether they succeed or not, it's not up to the county officials, it's up to the voters. They voted for Mr. Whitaker to be supervisor, and they can vote to have him be unsupervised, right? And so it's a little troubling that a lot of money, I'm told, was spent on behalf of staff time in the county clerk's office and running around trying to convince or find somebody in the county to say, we really don't have to do this recall. Now, if a recall happens in between two elections, they have to call a special election. That's expensive. But the recall proponents, the folks that want Supervisor Whitaker recalled, their hope is to get enough signatures. They have 90 days, and it pushes it up against, it's a little short now to even get it up into the November election. But they have 90 days to get sufficient signatures from that district alone. You don't get them from all over the county. It's that district. That's the district that voted for them, so that's the district that has to vote them out if they're going to do it. So all they need is they need to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. I didn't get the exact number. I think it's over 2,000 good signatures, and they're working on that. Finally, the paperwork, although the paperwork drug around several days longer than it should because they had all the paperwork done properly. So it may cut them short on getting their paperwork in for the November election if they're going to make it. If they get it on the ballot, then at least 50% plus one person has to vote against Jim Whitaker and say, yes, we want him recalled. Just 50% plus one. And of those voting. And at that point, then, whoever else wanted to get on the ballot in case he does get recalled and would like to have that spot in his place, whoever gets the most votes in that group then becomes the supervisor for the rest of his term. So if you're out there in the 4th District and you have some feelings about this, you can sign that petition if you want to see Whitaker recalled. But that's happening now, and it's all a volunteer. There's no paid. This isn't a big paid campaign by some local George Soros type that's got an axe to grind with the supervisor. It's really a grassroots movement of people that are connected to this high school fiasco. And so that's some amazing news. You know, it seemed like every week it's it's like a soap opera over in Sutter County. People are suing the county. People are paying off. The county's paying off people. It's just left and right. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've lived around here my whole life, and I've never seen. I mean, you'll see counties go for years without ever getting sued. There's no problem. You know, people come, people go, things happen. But I've never seen anything like this. So I'm going to talk about another case that just got settled this last week. Anu Chopra, who was a deputy district attorney who was fired, and they just paid off the other day. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're into our second hour today. We're going to noon. This is Live with Lou, and they call this place the Patriot. We're sitting up here on Mount Huth. It's kind of like a little thin air up here, but we came in today. It was nice and chilly and everything. I thought, man, somebody's spending some money out here today. Got some air conditioning going on. So I want to talk about the Anu Chopra case, which I know you out there in these other counties, you don't probably know about it. But we're all faced with people, we get saddled with people we elect to office or get hired to run departments, and then they don't do a very good job. Or you have county employees that get paid well. In fact, they get paid more than anybody in the private sector. They have fancy retirement, lots of time off, lots of sick leave. And then when they leave, they go out on stress leave, or something's wrong with them physically, or they complain somebody did something wrong to them. And then they sue the county, and the county pays them. It just seems, doesn't it seem like there's a routine of that? Happens a lot. So back in 2016, I don't want to go into all the details. If you want to study it, you can just Google it. A lady named Anu Chopra. The Appeal Democrat originally referred to her as a Sikh. If you're new to that, that's one of the religions that Punjabi people follow. Some of them are Sikhs, some of them are Hindu, and some of them are Christian. And I'm sure some of them are other things. But they refer to her as a Sikh. I think she's actually a Hindu woman, but you couldn't tell by looking. So she worked for the County of Sutter as a deputy prosecutor, a deputy attorney, deputy district attorney. And all of a sudden, some defense attorneys, this didn't start where the DA had an axe to grind with the deputy DA. This started, according to the newspaper articles back in the day, with defense attorneys saying, your prosecutor's not following legal court procedures. One of the things, I'm a long ways from an attorney, but my understanding is from talking to my friends who are involved in law enforcement is that, and this happened in the Bundy case that got thrown out over in Nevada, the prosecution is mandated, that means they have to, give all the information that they've learned to the defense. So everybody's operating with the same facts or the information. And you can't hide stuff from each other. And the defense was saying that Anu Chopra wasn't playing fair in court. And Brian Aronson, who's the judge in one of these cases, actually didn't call her a liar, but said that the way she was describing things wasn't exactly the way it should be described. You know, did you notice that if I lie, they just say I'm a liar? But if somebody in a high stature in the county or city lies, they won't say that. They misspoke, right? Or they use other terms. They call them euphemisms. Anyway, Anu Chopra, that's the way the whole the situation started. And so the district attorney, Amanda Hopper, asked her to resign after she investigated the situation because she felt, according to the reports, that there was legitimate cause and she violated her trust as an attorney, and so she needed to leave. And Anu Chopra refused to do that, so the county fired her. Then she hired a firm that specializes in suing over these kind of situations, and she sued the county. And she not only sued the county for unlawful firing, she accused them of racial harassment because she's Indian, not American, indigenous, Native American, but Indian from India. And so she alleged a hostile work environment, discrimination, retaliation, and failure to prevent discrimination. In other words, it's like people didn't like her because she's an Indian woman. And so they harassed her and made the job impossible. It had nothing to do with court and her improper activities in court. So District Attorney Amanda Hopper said in this article written by Harold Kruger, when this was all happening, Harold's now retired, she said in an email that Chopra's lawsuit makes inflammatory and false accusations, and my office intends to defend itself against all accusations and will seek to strike out scandalous and false accusations from the court complaint. Hopper said she is proud, according to Harold Kruger, the author of this article, proud of the Sutter County District Attorney's Office, the work we do, the team we now have, and the integrity we have exhibited throughout the process. So that was the district attorney's position when this case came to be. In other words, we're fighting this. She was in the wrong. This is a lie. Da 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 da. Well, now we're told, like there were rumors that the county was going to pay her off, but they didn't want to pay her off and admit to any wrongdoing or make it look like they had any wrongdoing before the district attorney election, because the district attorney, Amanda Hopper, was coming up for election and they didn't want Anu Chopra to run against her. So the thought was that the county was going to procrastinate going to court against Anu Chopra or settling this case until it was too late for her to run for office, because she would run against the current district attorney. So lo and behold, as someone likes to say in stories, Sutter County didn't agree to vigorously defend against her. In fact, and these aren't public things. You know, there's so much in government now that's done in secret. But people told me that a panel was brought together of, respectable people in town, and they brought this whole situation before them and asked them, do you think we ought to fight this, or do you think we ought to settle? And the majority of them, by far, said, let's fight this. This is wrong. Let's fight this. So in spite of that, Sutter County reached a $325,000 settlement. And not only that, this is what's amazing to me. I mean, the money's always amazing, right? Because whose money is that? That'd be all you Sutter County residents over there. You think, oh, no insurance paid for that. Well, just like when you crash your car, if you got complete coverage, you got yourself a deductible in there, partner. And when you keep paying out on insurance, what happens to you? Whenever I've gotten enough crashes or tickets, the insurance company, what do? They raise your rates. Or they just say, we don't want you no more. Go find somebody else to insure you. So in this article by Rachel Rosenbaum on March 29th, the conditions of the settlement. Now, I want you to remember what I just read, that District Attorney Hopper said we're going to vigorously defend and refute and strike and et cetera, et cetera. So this says, as conditions of the settlement, the county agrees to rescind Chopra's termination. In other words, they're going to say they're striking that. In other words, you know something? We didn't really fire you. And instead, they're going to accept her resignation as well as provide her with a plaque for acknowledging her 10 years of service to the county. The county will also remove a number of documents from her personnel file to be sealed. And even Jesus can't see in there. Even though he can read your thoughts, they got special files over in Sutter County that nobody can get into. Unless they really want to get into it anyway. Then they cheat. So they're going to be sealed, and there's a number of documents. Now, I wonder what those documents are. Rachel Rosenbaum doesn't say what those documents are, because now they're like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're going to be buried or shredded or something, incinerated. Chopra agrees to dismiss her case against the county and will not reapply for employment or temporary placement with the county. Now, it didn't say she couldn't run for office. But it's too late to run against the district attorney. Isn't that amazing how that all happened that way? Shazam, as Gomer Pyle would say. Shazam, Shazam, Shazam. So, anyway, she walks out smelling like a rose. And so it says at the bottom, Rachel Rosenbaum, the writer, says, Sutter County Superior Court Judge Brian Aronson did not rule her actions were misconduct, and he did not sanction her. He did say that it appeared as though Chopra's comments made to him during the trial, quote, were shaded in a way to not fully disclose the truth. Now, I thought when I had to testify a few years ago, they said the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Then there was no thing in there that said, but if you could shade the truth. You could shade the truth. Now, that's a new term for me, shade the truth. In that same hearing, the district attorney's office provided evidence that Chopra was aware of an investigator's evidence at an earlier date that she said she was, according to archives. In other words, she was aware of information that she did not share with the defense attorney. And that's where it all started. These reputable defense attorneys, I think Craig Leary in Marysville might have been one of them. I went to high school with Craig. He's been around many years, respected attorney in town. He's probably been an attorney for 40 years, and he filed a complaint and got this all started. Well, anyway, that's what happened. So we have two suits against Jim Whitaker, not against the county, against the school district. But we have a recall against Jim Whitaker in the county. And we have suit now settled with Anu Chopra. And we have a lawsuit by Jason Parker, who was fired also by the current district attorney, Amanda Hopper. There's just a lot of lawsuits going on, and then there's a feeling that Francisco Cervantes, who works over there, may file a suit, and they're just all kinds of trouble. It's really sad. Because at the end of the day, all this fighting, nobody's getting anything done, right? If you're fighting all the time and defending yourself against suit, you're not getting the people's business done for which you're being paid a lot of money. Isn't that true? And when they have to pay somebody that's suing them, that money is coming. That's why you got potholes out there. That's why you got all kinds of problems. So that's just the way that is. That's what's new in the zoo at Sutter County, or some people like to refer to it, the Sutter Gutter. Well, I want to mention that around my area, because law enforcement and the counties have somehow, and the judges somehow, let me just start with the judges. These federal judges are socialist, and so what they believe is that people that don't want to go to work and don't want to stay sober, they don't have to. And the government then is incumbent upon the government to pay their way, buy them food, pay for their medical, put them in a place to live, because they don't want to take responsibility for their lives, right? So when people decide, I'm going to cash in on all the handouts, but I don't want to live in an apartment, or it doesn't add up to enough to get an apartment, so I'm just going to camp out on county or government property. Judges are saying they have a right to be there, right? So right now they're saying, in different places around California at least, that if you provide more housing, like hotel rooms or motel rooms or whatever, for a handful of them, then you can run the rest of them off public property. Now, that just doesn't seem logical to me, because I think then somebody else is going to file a lawsuit, right? And so what's happening around my neighborhood is that there's just all kinds of foolishness going on, because police won't arrest people for panhandling or vagrancy or hitting people up or strong-arming people or whatever. And so more and more what's happening, and this happened really in Detroit, where Detroit, there are about 80,000 homes that went abandoned because people couldn't make a living there, and they just moved and left their home and just said, hey, whatever you want to move in, move in. We're done. We can't pay for that thing. We're done. 80,000 homes. So they quit serving those areas, a lot of those areas, with law enforcement and police. If a place caught on fire, they just let it burn to the ground. And they would not do patrols out there. If somebody got shot, they'd just say, hey, just like picking up a dead dog off the highway, they just go pick them up. No big investigation. So what happened in Detroit is they started hiring private. It's just like these mercenaries that go over and fight instead of our military. They're like ex-soldiers. They started hiring private security firms in Detroit to protect businesses in kind of the edge of this apocalyptic area because law enforcement wasn't going to do the job there, even though you're paying taxes for law enforcement. That's what's going on in the city of Marysville and the city of Yuba City. So my friend Monty Hecker, who's been running Elite Universal Security for years, he's over there patrolling some of these businesses by my house because nobody else will. And so the reason I bring him up, if you got a business or maybe your home, you're concerned about your home, you're going to go away on vacation. And you think, I don't know whether anyone's going to check this home or not. Or maybe you're out in the country and you have a lot of valuables out there. Maybe you got a tractor or, equipment. You can call up Monty at 749-0280. That's a 530 area code, 749-0280, and he will help you. In fact, if somebody's stealing from you, he'll figure out how to catch them. I like that. We were getting stolen from left and right out there at the warehouse out at Glad Tidings, and then finally we had to just move somebody in, right? Helped us when we did that. They'd just take the side right off the building, go right in through the side, right? They'd back a vehicle right in. They'd go through the roll-up door without rolling it up. They'd just drive right through it. They even tried to drive through the person door. I think they were on meth that night because a car normally doesn't make it through a 3-foot wide opening. But they probably they were hallucinating. They probably thought we could just squeeze right in there. But then they finally just bring their equipment and they just either cut a hole or unscrew the side of the building. But we solved it. We just moved a guy in there. So Monty, he could solve your problem with Elite Universal Security. You can go on their website, EliteUniversalSecurity.com. If you need a job, maybe you would like to help him and get paid for it. That's called a job. For those that haven't had one for many years, that's when you help somebody and serve somebody and they actually pay you for it. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good idea. And so Monty could put you to work. Or if maybe you want to learn how to shoot somebody and not shoot yourself in the process, or tase somebody, or spray somebody in the face with pepper spray. I got sprayed over there at Juvenile Hall one night. I tell you that. They were spraying. A bunch of kids wanting to get up. They were all wanting to fight one night, and they busted out the spray, and I got a little overspray on me. It wasn't no fun. So maybe you're thinking about, I'd like to maybe go to work as a security guy at the hospital, or maybe get into policing, or maybe work for another organization, maybe a county organization, and I need some training. And so they can do that for you, and they have classes coming up. They got some good stuff going on. And you can look at that. If you go on their website at apiacademy.com, api-academy.com, they have a calendar there that tells you all the courses that are coming up, and you can just leap into those courses, and they're right here in Yuba County. If you want a job, you can go to they serve Yuba, Sutter, Butte, and then all the way up to Redding. They're up in Redding. So lots of good classes. Go check them out. And or if you have a problem, Monty Hecker, he'll solve your problem. He'll figure it out. He'll figure it out. So everybody's, I know, real sensitive about this situation down in Sacramento, right? Guy got himself killed by the police. And marching, and I saw some guys on Facebook. I don't have a TV hooked up, but I saw some folks were just driving, going to get groceries or going to work or driving their kids to karate, and these guys are just jumping up on their cars and breaking their windows out. I thought, well, they didn't do anything. They didn't hurt the boy. They're not racist. How do you know they're racist? How come you're just picking on them, right? I thought, man, this is kind of gnarly. And so I was noticing that gentleman that maybe I shouldn't use the term gentleman, but that fella that's an illegal alien that killed the 2 police officers down in Sacramento, he just laughed in court and said, yeah, I'd kill some more if I had the opportunity. Nobody marched for the cops. Not one person marched for those cops. And he just told everybody to F off, and he'd kill as many more. He's been an illegal alien in and out of the country. Luis Bracamontes, 37. They gave him the death penalty. You think he'll die before you die? I doubt it. He'll just be down there, Pelican Bay, up there in Pelican Bay, up near the Oregon border. But Placer County Sheriff's detective got killed. Sacramento County Sheriff deputy got killed. Just blew him away. So we'll be right back. We're going to be talking about illegal aliens here in a minute. And so hang with us. All right. Well, Wikiman and I, Santos Vigil, we're recording this for you for Saturday morning. You're listening Saturday. We're long gone because we did our work, but we couldn't be out there Saturday. So this is live. We don't like to do best of or worst of, so we just do new stuff, but sometimes we have to pre-record it. So if you call in, you're going to get the big kahuna, not us, and it's recorded. So you won't be able to chat today. So I was talking before the break about a guy, an illegal alien, down here in Sacramento that said, if I had the chance, said this right in court before God and everybody, said, I get a chance, I'm going to kill more of them mother effers, and laughed after killing 2 law enforcement guys who came to investigate or serve a warrant or something like that at a motel in Sacramento. Now, the liberals, as we've been playing some clips here earlier today, back 10, 15 years ago, were all anti-immigration, illegal immigration, anti-illegal immigration. Taking jobs, they sound like Republicans. But now they're changing because they need those votes. It has nothing to do with caring about Americans or brown people from south of the border, other flavors of people from around the world. They want those votes because now, different from when immigration was what I call anybody could get here. If you could get to the shore, you could come. When that happened, around even back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were no benefits except the benefit of coming to a country that had the philosophy of America, political philosophy of America, and it was booming economically. And if you could make it, good for you. If you couldn't make it, you just jumped on the boat, went back to where you came from. But there was no welfare, there was no food stamps, there was no free housing, there wasn't free jack. So, but now, with the Democrats guaranteeing that if you can get across that border, however, hook or crook, as they say, we will cover you. We got you. We got your medical, we got your housing, we got your education. We got everything. All you have to do is get here. So then when you bring up a guy like Luis Bracamontes, 37, who murdered these guys, these 2 law enforcement guys, and nobody cares about them. Nobody's marching, and I've never seen any American demonstrate on behalf or show respect for law enforcement in some sort of a big funeral or procession to the cemetery. Ever break a thing. Isn't it interesting? I don't understand it, whether it's in the black or the Mexican, or maybe it's just a black thing where you got to bust everything up, right, and steal a set of tennis shoes. Or maybe a fifth of vodka helps you through gives you a little more courage. So Bracamontes killed these guys, and then the left wants you to think that this is an outlier experience. Outlier means very odd, out of the ordinary, that the average immigrant is just a hard-working, tax-paying, just a big contributor to this society, and we can't live without them. And I'm here to tell you that is a crock of crap. That isn't the majority of them, and they aren't contributing more than they're taking. There's all kinds of research that sorts all that stuff out. And a lot of them are committing crimes. In fact, federal prison has a huge percentage of folks that are locked up in federal prison are immigrants that got themselves into trouble. So I found this article interesting, and I know the left is just wanting Trump to catch a bullet in the brain. And so what happened is, you heard of Liberia. I was talking about it a week or two ago when I talked when the slaves were freed. Different abolitionists, people on both sides of the argument, came together and they took Americans' tax dollars and bought a country, basically, bought a chunk of land in Africa and carved out a place called Liberia. And if you go over there, a lot of the towns are named after Americans, like Monrovia is Monroe, right? But it was a big flop in terms of not many former slaves wanted to go over there. But just like America has allowed itself to be a rescue spot for people that were in countries that were under assault, or maybe there was a civil war. And so back about 20 years ago, Liberians had a civil war. There was a guy named Charles Taylor. You probably remember that. He was one of the leaders of one of the factions. So all these Liberians were allowed here, but what's been happening is these folks have been allowed in temporarily as refugees, but then no one ever tells them to leave, and no one ever sorts out their status. So Trump has begun to look at all these different groups, Liberians, who came in many, many years ago. And so he ended what they call the deferred enforced departure status of a bunch of Liberians. DED, they call them, deferred enforced departure. They were allowed to stay in the United States for more than a decade after the expiration of their temporary protected status in 2007. In other words, they should have gone home then. So it looks like roughly 1,000 Liberians will go home. Well, all kinds of people are saying, well, that ain't fair. We like settled down over here. You know, it's interesting to me how whiny Americans are. I know a lot of missionaries around the world, and they are in countries where they're citizens of the United States, but they're serving in countries, and it happens all the time. In fact, it's been happening in China and Vietnam recently, where they're just asking foreigners that are on visas that they're concerned about to just get up and leave. They've been there for years working and maybe helping in medical or humanitarian work, or maybe they're doing spiritual work. I don't know. But they just say, nobody gets up in arms in Vietnam about it, or China. The government just says leave, and that's just what you do. You just pack up and leave. During the communist takeover in 1949 in China, thousands of missionaries were forced to leave. So some of you that aren't into following Jesus, you're saying, well, I don't care about that anyway. Well, the point is, broaden your perspective. It's people, whatever they believe. If you're told to leave and you've been living in a country for 15 or 20 years, you're told to leave. They got a right to tell you to leave. You don't belong there. That ain't your home. It's just a job. So Trump is basically saying there's roughly 325,000 foreigners who've been living in the United States, sometimes for more than 2 decades, because they were allowed in here when all hell was breaking loose in their country. So they said, we'll let you come in temporarily, and then you got to go home. So George Bush, who was not helpful in this immigration thing, and Barack Obama both extended the DED status twice. 2 or 3 times, in fact. So the Liberians are throwing a big fit, but Trump says, hey, they have jobs. They did not come in here under where they applied properly to become citizens of the United States. They came into this other category. So there's like 260,000 people from El Salvador, 58,000 Haitians, 5,000 Nicaraguans, 1,000 Sudanese, 86,000 from Honduras. And they're going to ask them to leave. And I don't have a problem with it. They don't belong here. If they want to apply and come through the other way, fine. But just because all hell broke loose, and now all hell isn't breaking loose, so go back home. Right? Just go back home. Like there's some people that don't want to live in the United States any longer. They want to live in Europe or they want to live in Mexico. And I say, hey, cool. It's their life. They only get to live once. It's a very short life. Go enjoy yourself. Live somewhere else. It's okay. I mean, I don't think that is a slap in the face to the United States if they like it better somewhere else. But if those countries finally said, we don't want you here anymore, they shouldn't whine about having to come back to the United States. It's just like, hey, why do you get why don't you just get along with all the laws of everywhere? So that's going on. And the other thing is, the thing is, most of you don't know what you're talking about out there when you get into illegal immigrants. I spend every day, I'm with all kinds of them in the Yuba County Jail. In fact, I just had a Miss Saigon. I don't know whether I call her Miss Saigon. She's out on bail right now. She's from Vietnam, but she lives in Ontario, and she came up to visit on the bus, and we had lunch with her yesterday, and we kept her overnight and sent her on a bus down to Arizona to visit her mom. But she's, she got in trouble. She was out doing dope, did a crime, ran into a police officer with a car, ran into a car versus a car. They put her in prison, right? Aggravated assault, big charges, felonies. So she served her time, and then now she's fighting whether they're going to deport her. She's married to a Cambodian in this country, got 3 kids. Hey, she knows she screwed up, but she's straightened out her life. But that jail over there in Yuba County is loaded with nearly 200 of these folks. There's thousands of them in California alone. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement, we call them ICE now, they arrested 89 criminal, like they say, well, they give you the picture in the liberal media that they're just making sweeps, driving up and down the street, looking for somebody that looks like a foreigner and just picking them up. They're not doing that at all. They're doing just like what they do when they do parole sweeps here and they go visit Norteño gang members that are out on probation. And they do sweeps and they go into their house to see if they're packing any machine guns, right? Or dope or bombs, right? And if they're violating probation, they arrest them. They're not looking for just any Mexican. They're looking for Norteños or Sureños, right? Or they're looking for Hmong Nation gang members, right? So the ICE agents arrested 89 people, 67 of which had criminal histories. The histories, I want you to think about this, because what if you were a victim of one of these folks? Aggravated assault, family strong arm, aggravated assault of a public servant. That would be a cop. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, alien smuggling, assault causing bodily injury, assault causing bodily injury, family violence. That would be spousal violence, assault, child abuse, criminal mischief, dangerous drugs, discharge of a firearm, driving while intoxicated, fraud, illegal entry, indecent lewd acts with a child under 16, larceny, liquor violation, manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance. That would be probably methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine. Negligent homicide, that would be running over somebody drunk. Possession of marijuana, possession of methamphetamines, possession of controlled substance, racketeering, rape, robbery, making terrorist threats. The individuals were from Mexico, 59 of them, Guatemala, 12, Honduras, 8, Colombia, 3, Nigeria, 2, El Salvador, 1, Laos, 1, Nicaragua, 1, Pakistan, 1, Vietnam, 1. You don't think they should pick these people up? Let me read you a couple of the details. 45-year-old citizen of Guatemala was arrested in Mesquite, Texas. He was convicted of sexual assault in 1991. That's probably rape. Was sentenced to 10 years deferred probation. He has been previously removed from the United States and illegally re-entered, which is a felony. He will be processed for removal, da-da-da-da. Here's another one. 27 28-year-old citizen of Vietnam was arrested in Oklahoma City following his conviction for rape and 2 counts of indecent lewd acts with a child under 16. In 2012, he was respectively sentenced to 15 years suspended and 20 years suspended for each count. I don't know how they suspend these things when he rapes somebody. He remains in ICE custody pending an immigration hearing. Okay, I'm just going to read a couple of them, give you a flavor of like who you think is in this country and doing us a solid. A 28-year-old citizen of Mexico is arrested in Lancaster, Texas. He's wanted by authorities in Mexico for homicide based on a 2009 arrest warrant. In other words, I always tell juvenile hall kids, when they break out and they run down to their girlfriend's house to have sex and have a little smoke marijuana, then they come back to juvenile hall because they catch them. I said, why don't you just go to Mexico? In this case, these people are running to the U.S. to get away from authorities, right? They committed murder in Mexico. He was also convicted in Texas for driving while intoxicated. Now, listen, I want you to do this. If you take the Appeal Democrat, look at the paper every time they list the crime briefs and look under DUIs and look how many Mexicans are arrested for DUIs. It's an epidemic among that people group. Whether they're legal or illegal, they just don't have a problem having confidence that they can make it home after they knock down a bunch of tequila or whatever they like to drink, beer or whatever. I got guys, I had them raise a hand. I had 20 guys in a class, and I was talking, I said, man, I didn't realize it was so expensive to get caught on a DUI. I said, man, that's a lot of money to surrender. CHP commander told me it costs sometimes up to $10,000. And I said, any of you guys ever got caught on DUI? The whole place raised their hand. It was like almost 100%. Officers, it said in this article, arrested 88 men and 1 woman ranging in age from 19 to 60 years of age. How about this? This is a lady. This is unbelievable. She's illegal. She was previously made a fake bomb threat in Pratt County, Kansas, and now they caught her with a gun. Claudia Rodriguez Oviedo, a 33-year-old, she had a gun and 35 rounds of ammunition. And she previously worked in the Pratt County school system as a secretary, but was convicted for making a bomb threat to a high school in the school district. Like, what in the world is she thinking? And this is the type of people we got. She's illegal employed. Did you catch that? She's illegal employed by the school system. You know, the school systems will not ask kids whether they're illegal or not. And the Yuba College school system, I don't know how about Marysville High School or Marysville Joint Unified or Yuba City Unified or any of these other school systems around the counties I'm talking to. But Yuba College, Yuba College, junior college here in Yuba County, and they're also located in Woodland and Sutter County and all over the place. They sent out a memo telling their employees to not cooperate with immigration and law enforcement regarding illegals attending that school. And not only that, they said, we're going to pay for their DACA permits to stay in this country. That's almost $500 a piece. And we're going to pay their fees for school. Now, and then you wonder why we get illegal aliens. Now, what Donald Trump's saying is, hey, those jobs should be for citizens. These jobs working, whether it's in a manufacturing plant or driving truck or wherever, those jobs should first go to citizens of the United States or people that are here legally with a work permit. But what we're talking about here are people, when they say they're illegal aliens, they do not have any proper paperwork. They did not come through and apply to come here and work for a period of time, whether they work for peach growers or manufacturing, whatever. Now, here's the latest. In Phoenix, which is, they've always had this problem in Phoenix, they made a human smuggling bust and detained 30 people. Now, this is interesting because they have what they call these drop houses. So they smuggle them across, and like, you think, well, do they leave them off at Taco Bell, right? To grab a little chow? What do you do with them when you get them across? They put them in a drop house. They're houses that have been rented to keep them safely until they figure out where to from here. And so in Orange County, I'm told, because I have friends down in Orange County, they have houses where illegals are flying in, pregnant illegals, flying in, coming in, however, and they stay there and deliver their babies in the United States and pay the people that are managing the system of these drop houses, pregnancy houses, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. They don't pay for the pregnant. They don't pay for the operation to have the baby. They pay the smugglers that kind of money so they can come have the baby right here. Unbelievable. So during the 2000s, earlier, in the early 2000s, Phoenix experienced a crisis known as the super drop houses. At that time, 160 and 180 illegal immigrants were busted within weeks of each other. The super drop houses were associated with organized crime, violence, and they were involved in armed robberies, kidnapping for ransom, and murder. Listen, people, this is intense stuff. Now, the other thing that's going on that you probably never get to hear anything positive from the media is border agents are rescuing illegal immigrants that get out in the desert. They're abandoned by their coyotes or smugglers, and they know they're dying. They're lost. They run out of water, and you know what they do? They dial 911, right? And the Border Patrol comes. The Border Patrol comes and finds them and saves their life. And they have trained teams. They're called the Mobile Response Team, MRTs. And they go over there and they have water and they give them an IV right on the spot. They're trained to like hit a vein and rehydrate them. They're also what they call the Borstar, EMT trained Borstar members. Whole teams of people that just go in and save people that have run out of steam out in the desert trying to bust into this country. So they just saved a guy, 29-year-old guy the other day. Agents transported the 2 Mexican nationals and 1 Honduran national to the Ajo station for processing. So then they take him to an immigration station, and then they hold him till they put him through the whole system. Listen, people, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people. A lot of these folks are criminals. So we'll be right back, and we got 1 hour to go. Well, all right, this is Lou Benninger. You've been listening to Live with Lou, and we're kind of just trucking along here. We got 1 hour to go, and then after we finish, there's going to be some guys change it up big time, talk about sports. So if you're like a pointy-headed sports person, you can listen to them. Also, Zach has got a show, isn't it 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock, right? Saturday night? Saturday night. Our friend Zach, he said he's up in Nevada County, but he comes down and does a sports show himself. He says, give me a plug, Lou, so people will listen to me. So if you like sports, you can listen to the guys right after us at noon, and then Zach comes on later at 6 o'clock at night. Then a brand new show with folks we've known from conservative politics down here in Yuba and Sutter County and Tea Party and all that kind of stuff. They're going to be here. The Reicherts, Tammy and her husband Jason, and Tom Burns, and Bill Beeler, they're all going to be here, and they're all going to be talking. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but you just check it out at 1 o'clock from 1 to 3 on Sunday and see how you like it. You could probably call in, and you could be the 5th or 6th person on the line. So let's see. Also, I want to mention again before we leave today that Monday night, the 2nd of April, is the town hall meeting for the supervisors that are competing for 2 seats in Yuba County for what we call the foothill area or the mountain area of Yuba County. That's the 5th district. And then also for the first district down here in the just below the foothills in Linda. We call it Linda area. So the incumbent, the guy that's serving right now, is Andy Vasquez in District 1 and Randy Fletcher up in District 5. So if you're familiar with that, you want to listen to that. The Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots starts at 6:30. Doors open at 6 Monday night, and they're going to have a discussion and interview them and allow them to make some comments about their vision of the county and where they think we ought to head. And so you could probably submit some questions and check it out if you've never met these folks. So it's important. These elections are important, and you ought to take part in it. So that's this coming Monday. And they also meet on the third Monday night. I'm not quite sure what the third Monday night's going to look like, but we'll tell you next week. I want to talk to you about a few minutes about the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. You heard of them? A guy named Richard Nixon, when he was president, he started that group. And at that time, there was a concern that, there was a concern that a lot of major factories or production operations, mines, all kinds of stuff, had created a cleanup that needed to take place. And they felt a government agency needed to oversee and administer cleanups. And there used to be this concept called the Superfund. I don't even remember that term, Superfund. And they would go in and take this money, taxpayer money, and usually they would bill back these major corporations that they created some waste or something that was a pollutant, and they needed to clean it up. So they were the instigators to, hey, let's keep our society clean. Pretty simple, right? Not a bad idea. But anything that government gets involved in can always be contorted, twisted, jerked around, and be manipulated by politics and agendas of a special interest group. So it wasn't long after Nixon came and went that these, what I call environment, most people I know they want the environment to be clean, right? I pick up the garbage in front of my house, and I didn't create the garbage. Somebody else dropped it out there. And, a lot of the youngsters nowadays think that recycling started with them. Actually, there was more money in recycling when I was a kid. We used to turn in all our glass bottles. You remember that? Do you ever do that? Was it when you were a youngster? They were worth a lot of money. We would just haul them glass bottles in. We wanted those glass bottles. And people just naturally recycled stuff much more than being mandated to do it, ordered to do it by law, or being charged extra for your product. So these, and the other thing, let me preface this by saying, when I was a kid, we had great respect for people called scientists. Scientists were people that were very smart, that they had what we used to be taught a hypothesis, right? They had a hypothesis or an idea of how things might work, but they didn't know for sure, so they did these experiments to confirm the hypothesis. But the whole idea of being a pure scientist was that you followed the facts. You followed the outcomes of the surveys or the research. And whichever way the facts led, that's what you went with, right? Now, that's different than today. We have scientists now that are just basically prostitutes for the environmentalists and for government. If they have an agenda, a certain agenda, they give them money to do research, and then they change the numbers, like on global warming or greenhouse gases. They fudge the numbers. They cheat. Scientists do. They no longer follow the hypothesis, or they no longer follow where the facts lead to come up with their conclusion. Did you know that? So the Environmental Protection Agency, I always thought agencies had to do what our elected representatives told them to do, like the House of Representatives, the Congress, or the Senate. That an agency just couldn't make up a law. I thought that we hired people, we voted for people to go to Congress, and then if we wanted a law, they fought over it, debated it, argued it back and forth, and then they may make a law, or they may not. But what I've realized now in the last 30, 40 years is that these agencies have become a law to themselves. And they make up regulations, and then they come and fine you. It's just like, to use a really small example, local level, we have a rule where if you want a liquor store, you have to go before the alcohol beverage control, and you get a permit to have a liquor store. Or you buy a liquor permit from somebody else, but you still have to go through ABC to get the okay. But then we have local agencies, like in this case, in the city of Yuba City, we have a guy named Darren Gale who went over to my friend who he had all his licenses, but he said, well, we're not going to allow you to sell a single 16-ounce beer at a time. You can only sell by the pack, a 6-pack or bigger. And so he just made up a rule. The city council didn't tell him to do that. The city administrator didn't tell him to do that. The government, the federal government or state government didn't tell him to do it. He just made up his mind. Well, what he did is exactly what all these environmental protection agency, all these agencies, the Energy Commission, they're all doing this. And they call it secret science. It's not real science. It's called secret science or junk science. In other words, they don't publicize it because they can't support it with any facts. It's just BS. Now, back in the 60s when I was getting ready to go to college, there was a gal that worked for the government named Rachel Carson. And she wrote a book called The Silent Spring. The Silent Spring. And the Silent Spring drew attention to many of brought the whole idea that all these chemicals that we're using, like to spray on foods or spray to kill bugs, et cetera, those chemicals could get into the food stream, get inside the food, and get inside our body and give us cancer or make us sick. Cause all kinds of problems. Or the things that we spray in the air or the smoke that we let out in a factory could then become what they call particulates in the atmosphere or in our air we breathe, and that the air we breathe could give us cancer. In other words, it just wasn't cigarettes that we smoke or secondhand smoke or thirdhand smoke, but other stuff in the air could actually give us cancer. So they started to say this stuff. Rachel Carson was not a scientist, and she started to proclaim this, and her book today is still being read in colleges, and it's proclaimed like it's like God actually wrote it, and it was like the 10 Commandments coming off Mount Sinai. And so that book began to drive a lot of this agenda that we need to stop all this stuff. And they just made up stuff. Like recently, they made up fake news regarding Monsanto, which is a big chemical company that created a product called Roundup. And you spray it on weeds, and it's a contact spray that it gets sucked down into the root system of the weed, and it kills it from the root up. Nowadays, you can buy, it's called a glyphosate, and they got all generic brands. But recently, they came out and said, Roundup caused cancer. Did you see that? And they totally, there was research that was done, but they lied. They took paragraphs out of the research and flip-flopped them. Instead of saying it doesn't, they said it does. And they propagated that to try to damage Monsanto. So Rachel Carson's book said that DDT, remember DDT? Maybe some of you around that DDT was bad. And they started saying stuff that was bad at the EPA, but there was no science to support it. And there's been a fight going on between Congress. Like in the 1900s, the EPA decided it wanted to regulate fine particulate matter. What is that? Dust. So they started saying, hey, you know, you got to be careful when you plow your field. If it's going to create a lot of dust, we can fine you. Or you want to burn some logs in your fireplace because it's cold in your house, we're liable to shut that all down because that smoke is a particulate. It's called a PM2.5 particulate, 2.5 particulate. But they had no hard scientific evidence to prove any of this. They just made it up. They just said, we don't want it. And so they created these rules. And so PM2.5 was not known to cause death. But by 1994, the EPA supported scientists. EPA financed these scientists to say this. Basically, they just bribed them. And they developed 2 lines of research purporting to show that it did kill people. And but the Clean Air Science Advisory Committee that the EPA has, they said, we're not going to buy that. That's not science. You just made that up. And Congress got involved, but the administrator, Carol Browner, she just flipped them the bird. This is how powerful these agencies are. And they just said, we're gonna look into this ourselves. So they had a Congressman Bliley that they were fighting with. And so he said, I want more scientific data. I want scientific data to prove what you're saying because you're affecting the lives of people in my community that you're trying to rule over. And we didn't even vote on this. You're just making up rules. So Carol Browner says, the head of the EPA at that time, said there's no useful purpose, quote unquote, in obtaining extra data. In other words, they had it dialed in. We're going to do what we want. And they fought over that for years. And then there's a guy named William Ruckelshaus. And he was the first administrator of EPA. He banned the use of DDT without any scientific proof that it damaged human life or birds or critters. At a 7-month EPA hearing presided over by Judge Edmund Sweeney, it concluded in a 9,000-page document, DDT is not a carcinogen, is not a carcinogenic hazard to man. DDT is not a mutagenic or teratogenic hazard to man. The use of DDT under the regulations involved here do not have a deleterious effect on freshwater fish, estuarian organisms, in other words, organisms in the water, or wild birds or wildlife. Rachel Carson in The Silent Spring said just the opposite, without any proof. And based upon that book and William Ruckelshaus, they banned the use of DDT in the U.S. Ruckelshaus ignored the entire hearing, the 9,000-page document, and because it didn't suit what he wanted to do, he just blew it off. Let me tell you what happened. I don't know whether any of you have had malaria here in the United States. It's almost eradicated. You know how it got eradicated? By DDT. When I lived in East Marysville, we got a lot of mosquitoes around here because we had a lot of water. We had rivers, we had lakes, we had ponds, and in the winter it rained a lot. But we had a lot of rice fields that they had to let the water set in. So in my area in East Marysville, the way the mosquito abatement people did it, they had Jeeps. And in the back of the Jeep, they had foggers. And the fogger, we loved it when the Jeep came down the street. It fogged the entire Jeep, pumping out DDT. And so we'd love to ride our bicycles behind it, and we'd ride in the fog of the Jeep. And we would follow the Jeep through the neighborhood because you could hide in the fog. And they would fog the neighborhood because it killed the mosquitoes in the neighborhood. Because they would, I don't know whether you've ever gone out to these rice fields about this time of night when they're flooded, and you just go out there in shorts and a short sleeve shirt and see how many times you get bit in 15 minutes. Don't swat them, just let them land and do their thing and then count the bites. It is unbelievable. They will carry you off. But we we would ride in the back. We would all the kids would say, "They're coming," just like dogs running out to the UPS truck or the garbage truck. We would say, "The fogger's coming." We would all get our bikes and go down the street right in the back of that, and because he'd be going really slow, so the fog would like emanate out into the houses. So they banned DDT. And I don't know anybody in my life that has ever got malaria in the United States. I have had friends that got malaria in other countries. But here's what happened. Based upon what we did in the United States, they banned DDT in countries that they had. You know, when I was in Uganda, I spent about nearly 20 days over in Uganda, outside of Entebbe and Kampala, Uganda, on Lake Victoria. And I'm telling you, when the sun sets, like tonight at 6, 7 o'clock at night, if you were blind, you could tell what time of day it is because the bugs, there's so many bugs, there actually is a hum. It's actually a because the bugs, there's a gajillion bugs. That's I found a new higher level of math. There's quadrillion, trillion, quadrillion, and there's gajillion. And there were so many bugs, there was a hum in the entire atmosphere. And if you turn on a light, I'm telling you, it was a fog of bugs. Those people get malaria and they have no treatment and they just lay down when they get sick and they either survive or they die. Millions of people died as a result of eliminating DDT. People like Bill Gates, now, instead of like promoting a product they would spray it in their huts at a very, very watered down. It doesn't take much to kill a mosquito. It's not enough. It's not enough to kill a human. It's very, very small, minute amount of DDT in the water. They'd spray the hut and kill the mosquitoes. Now we got a guy like Bill Gates. He spends his bajillions of dollars on nets. Nets are cool. In Cambodia, where I go, at the orphanage, they got 2,000 kids. At night, they net up, man. They're laying on bunks or on mats on the floor, and they net them up because you can get malaria. They're all over, you know. There's ponds. It's a tropical zone. There's lots of moisture. And so we literally, through our BS over here and through our junk science that never proved, it never has proved that DDT was a bad product that would kill birds, that would make the shells of the egg too thin, and it would do this and that and the other thing. Never proved it, but on the basis that the U.S., all these people, South America, Africa, India, blew off DDT, and millions of their people died as a result. So, Scott Pruitt, who is the new EPA director, and they want to shoot him just like they want to shoot Trump because he's stopping things. So he says we will not permit any junk science to be used to back up decision-making here. We're going to base our stuff, no secret science. Our science is going to be able to is going to have to be proven, just like we would approve something that goes a new drug on the market. It's going to have to be proven the old-fashioned way, the honest way. And secondly, we're not going to do these sue and settle suits anymore where we are in cahoots or in bed with the Sierra Club and encourage them to sue the government, so then we settle with them and change the law here instead of debating it in Congress. They hate Scott Pruitt, and Scott Pruitt is for a clean environment. But these people with the special agenda, I'm not saying they don't want a clean environment, but many of the things they want to do not produce a healthy environment because they don't have good research behind them. So there's a book. I got this book. I told you about this book called Watermelon. The guy that wrote this article, Delingpole, wrote that article. It's a book. It's a few years old. It's a great book, Watermelon. I'm reading it now. There's another book, Scare Pollution, instead of air pollution. Scare Pollution, SCARE. This guy that they quoted from said, if you read my book, Scare Pollution, you cannot escape reaching the conclusion that the studies linking air pollution to premature death are not science. So do we want clean air? I want it. When I was growing up in this area, many times when we were burning off the rice fields, which was the way we did it back in the day, you couldn't see the buttes from Marysville. They were gone for days. So and I had breathing problems as a kid, so I thought, right now we have cleaner air in the Yuba and Sutter County than we did when I was a child, just by looking at it. I don't know about the stuff you can't see. But what this says is that there's no studies that link air pollution to premature death. It's not science. There isn't smoke. Put cigarette smoke in your lungs. It's fraud. He just said it's straight fraud. It's called scare pollution. After all, he said, what reputable science would hide their data from the public scrutiny for 20 plus years? Only fraudulent people do that. Anyway, we're out of time. We got 30 minutes to go. We'll come back in just a minute and we'll finish up today. All right, we're coming to a close here at noon, and you're going to have some sports coming on after us, but we appreciate you listening today. If you want to give us a shout out, you can, but we're not going to be live here today. We're finishing up a recording that you're listening to, and so you can leave a message at 742-5555 if you're into it, 530, but we won't be able to hear it. In fact, I don't think I get many of the messages passed on to me, positive or negative, if I don't get them live. So I wanted to finish up talking about a couple more items here before we go. Al Sharpton is one of my least favorite people. I really don't dislike pretty much anybody. I mean, everybody's trying to sort life out, right? I don't like thieves and the ripoffs and people that rape people, and I don't like people that are manipulative, exploiting situations. And Al Sharpton has pretty much made his living lying and conniving and manipulating. In fact, he uses the term reverend, which kind of grinds on me. And I think he got a gal knocked up, and I mean, he's nothing of what he portrays himself to be, and he's always trying to cash in and lie about stuff. And many of the ones, whether it's Tawana Brawley, who said that a white guy raped her and threw her in a dumpster, or whether it's the strip dancer at a Duke University lacrosse party, he just lied, right? And it's okay to perpetrate lies if you're black, because whatever the end result is justified because somebody that was black hundreds of years ago got abused. And so I found it fascinating that at the same time Sharpton's out here cashing in, and I mean literally cashing in on the Sacramento tragedy of this young man dying. His half-brother, by the name of Kenneth Sharpton Glasgow, has been charged with murder. So within 36 hours of this guy, Kenneth Sharpton Glasgow, marching for gun violence, he gets arrested for murdering a young woman. So it's Sharpton's half-brother. He was arrested and charged with capital murder and the shooting death of a 23-year-old woman. And Glasgow's 52. He's one of two men charged for the murder of Brunia Jennings, who was found with a gunshot wound to the head last Sunday. Poor Brunia. And this guy goes by Reverend as well. So police responded to a report of a suspicious vehicle parked at a church just before 11 p.m. They discovered a damaged car in an intersection near the area and located Jennings lifeless body inside. She'd been shot through the window of the car in the head. She's pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators learned that the 26-year-old Jamie Towns had been upset with Jennings, Brunia Jennings, because he believed she had stolen his car. Jamie Towns thought that Brunia Jennings had stolen his car. He wanted to confront her, and he asked for Sharpton's half-brother to go help him. This guy's a pastor. I want you to think about Dave Bryan here, Wiki, because whether Dave would have gone out to chase down some gal that stole some guy's car, and he'd be packing. So now one option here, I know this is a stretch for most people. One option would be to report the car stolen and call police and say, I think there's a lady named Brunia Jennings in this car, and describe the car and just say, can you put it on an all points bulletin? Nope, they didn't do that. Instead, they went to get Reverend Al Sharpton Glasgow. And he took matters into his own hands, and Mr. Town jumped into Mr. Glasgow's brand new vehicle to go look for Brunia Jennings, according to Chief Parrish. Basically, Chief Parrish said they went hunting. Investigators believe Towns fired a round into Jennings' head while Glasgow drove the car. This is guy that claims he's a pastor. This is Al Sharpton's half-brother. The bullet shattered the back window of the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. Jennings had been driving. The glass was scattered around the intersection. There were two other unnamed occupants inside Glasgow's car. In other words, they had a whole carload of people going to run down this young woman, going to hunt her down because she stole the car. As they arrested Glasgow, this is Al Sharpton's half-brother, instead of showing remorse over the death of this young woman, he lamented the damage to his 2018 Toyota Camry, which is parked just feet away from the murdered woman. He said, quote unquote, man, that's a brand new car right there. You know something, people? There's some really stupid people down in Sacramento. This Al Sharpton, you remember the last time we talked about him, he owed the United States government. You pay your taxes. I bet most of the people listening to this show pay their taxes. And they're working on their taxes right now. In fact, a friend of mine was so frustrated, she texted me the other day. She said, I am so angry. She said, my husband and I are raising 2 kids. We live in a really small house because I can't afford to, I don't want to get in big debt. She said, we both work around the clock. She said, I got to pay $5,000 more in taxes. And I am furious because people are sitting around this country not doing jack, and my money's going to pay for their lives. And that's the kind of people Sharpton is. He's just a thief. He's a scumbag. He's just a piece of crap, Al Sharpton. He's a liar. He would throw anybody under the bus. And he hasn't found a black person alive, doesn't matter what they did, that he couldn't give a high five to and find an excuse for. During a Tuesday court appearance, Mr. Glasgow, Al Sharpton's half-brother, Glasgow already a convicted felon, but he's Reverend Glasgow, said he did not understand why he was facing a capital murder charge. Now, most people I know that aren't attorneys got that figured out. In other words, you drive the car of the dude that just drove up and shot the woman in the head, that would be a murder charge for you in the state of California. And this is down in Alabama. So maybe people are just a little slower down there, but they do have a law. So Glasgow says, I'm not responsible for what someone else does. He just asked me for a ride to take him to look for his car. This Sharpton thing, this kind of runs in the bloodline. Under Alabama law, a person who is believed to have aided or abetted a crime can be held liable for that crime. Murder committed through the use of a weapon while the victim is in a vehicle is considered to be a capital offense. On Saturday, the Saturday before, Glasgow marched along the streets of downtown Dothan, Alabama, demanding gun law reform as he yelled through a megaphone to the people. In 2016, he posed for a photo op with Hillary Clinton. Now he's held without bond. Next scheduled trial is April 6th for Al Sharpton. I don't know whether Al Sharpton is going to go down there and protest or not for his, do a brother a solid. Come down here and, tell him it's all racism. We really didn't mean to shoot her. I'm sorry. This guy, I called him Al Sharpton Glasgow. It's Kenneth. It's Al Sharpton and his half-brother Kenneth. Old Kenneth, he's down there with no bond. He's Reverend Kenneth. God bless him. He's trying to sort out his life. Said, I don't know what happened. He said, I was just driving the car. All of a sudden, that guy's like one of the kids in juvenile hall. I said, what are you coming back into juvenile? Well, they found a gun in the car. It's just like he didn't know how he got in the car. He didn't know whose car it was. He can't remember who's driving. They just stopped him, and they found a gun under the car. I said, you didn't know it was there? I had no idea it was there. I said, are guns oftenly found under the seat in most of the cars you drive? Unbelievable. Are you excited that Trump fired Veteran Affairs Secretary David Shulkin? It made my day. I couldn't figure out why they hired him. Holy mackerel. And, the guy is taking vacations to Italy and paying for them it's just like, who are these people? The head of Health and Human Services, what was that guy's name? That doctor, was it Price? Price? Anyway, that guy went nutso with the taxpayers. Why can't they just pay their own way if they want to go to Italy? Why are they? And in his assistant secretary, she just quit. Shulkin, man, she got under fire. She quit. But Shulkin, he was supposed to be there to help veterans, not help himself. And so it turns out, I don't know, the size of the veterans department and all the medical, I'm telling you, it's massive. It's massive, 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 massive. Oh, it's Tom Price. Yeah, Tom Price was health. The Veterans Administration, they have 1,200 facilities, including 170 medical centers. They take care of 9 million veterans. Trump got a law passed, I believe, that said those guys, if they couldn't get fast enough service and they weren't within 30 or 40 miles of a facility, right, they can go get private care. This guy was fighting against that. This guy was a government jockey, a bureaucrat from the get-go. It took a year to fire this guy. And I heard one of these liberals attacking Trump, saying him appointing this doctor who's the Surgeon General of the United States, the president's doctor, Jackson, who's a former Navy, or I think he's still serving somewhat in the Navy, commander. They mocked him that the guy was some pushover for Trump, that he would say whatever Trump told him to say about his medical. I thought, what better guy to take over is an actual military guy that cares about veterans. And hey, let's just shut down a bunch of this system and let private hospitals take care of these veterans and let them go to their private hospital and have the government just pay for it. It's like, what's so complicated about that? And just give them the right to go get the services they need and let all the hospitals know. Like, what's so complicated about that? Jackson is a Rear Admiral of the U.S. Navy. He's been working as a presidential physician since the George Bush years. That means he took care of Obama. it's a nonpartisan deal. Just go help veterans. Like, how complicated is that? It's like the veterans constantly get screwed no matter who's in office. So Jackson's a Texas native who's been on active duty since 1995. He served during the U.S.-led war in Iraq as an emergency medicine physician in Iraq. He's highly trained and qualified as a service member himself. He's seen firsthand the tremendous sacrifice of our veterans, according to Trump. It's like, hey, give the guy a shot. Everybody else is screwed up over there. It's a total fiasco. It's very, very sad. Give the guy a shot, and let's get somebody in there that can. The other guy had a year, and he starts flying. I can't remember what did they did get the VA Accountability Act passed, but let me read you something. Shulkin said after the release of the Inspector General's report on his foolishness that he will comply with its recommendation, including reimbursing the government for his wife's $4,312 airfare and paying his friend for the Wimbledon tickets that they were given. I mean, all these politicians, they just get so full of themselves. They get free tickets to the Kings game. Who wants to go to a Kings game? They're all like fairies down there. It's a big sissy operation down there anyway. Who would even want to go to one of those games? Like, you got to be a guy without a life to want to go sit in one of those, get drunk down there at a Kings game. The VA department announced 2 days after the report was issued that Shulkin's chief of staff, Viveka Wright Simpson, was retiring. Yeah, Viveka got herself in a jam because she was billing the taxpayer for all these flights all over the world. What are they doing going over there and charging the taxpayer? Just stay home and fix the VA service. It's like, can't somebody just do the job? Same way with that Tom Price. It's just like, God, who are these people? Who are these people? By the way, I just saw, this cracks me up. Iran is all indignant because John Bolton got appointed as the new head of security for McMaster's, right? So listen, you know, that's kind of like if Hitler's against you, that's a good endorsement, right? Or if Joseph Stalin hates you, that's a good endorsement. So Iran says Bolton pick as national security advisor is just a matter of shame. It's like, we hate him. So therefore, the Americans should all follow our lead. I thought, man, we have found the right guy. If we pick Jim Mattis, Secretary of Defense, you pick these guys. Pompei's having the same problem. They hate Pompei too. Man, when these foreign countries that are nutso hate all these guys, I thought we picked the right dude finally. Finally, we went through the lottery, kept picking the wrong guy, boom, kick him out. It's like musical chairs. I don't have any problem with keep firing these people. Just keep firing them till they get the right guy in there. If Bush would have done it, we'd have kept the guy for 8 years and complained about him for 8 years, and nothing would have happened. Just a big pain in the rear, the whole thing. I'm telling you what, I think we should put a team of people over that Veterans Administration and clean house. They went in there and had to pass a law that they could fire screwballs, right? They had to pass a special law to go out and fire the nutcases. And probably we'll finish on this. Because I work with people coming out of prison, this is so fascinating. You know, Governor Brown, the federal court said, you got to clean out your prisons. You got too many people in there for the amount of beds and stuff. You run space you got. You can't do that. And the thing was, you know, they always blame it on the people. Well, you need to lighten the laws up because we're booking too many people into prison. What they did was Gray Davis made a sweetheart deal with the corrections union and gave them a 35 to 40% raise. That's right before, remember we were having those brownouts? The utilities were all screwed up, and we voted to recall them. Right now, even though we let all these people out of prison, the cost is running $75,560 per person to house those guys. Now, that's amazing. So it isn't, we're not saving any money. Even though we let all those people out of prison, you know what they say? You know what the reason is? We got 11,500 fewer inmates since 4 years ago. But you know why the price is still up there? We're spending $11.4 billion with a B for the Corrections Department in the state of California. You know why? Because of the high cost of corrections officers. That they're paid like they're judges, and all they're doing, I mean, it's an important job. The prison guards, the salaries and benefits and medical are driving the increase. And what they do is they compare it to it's the highest cost of prisons in the United States. Does that surprise anybody? Actually, you could send them to Harvard for less money. Is that amazing? Send them to Harvard. Room and board, the whole thing. Tuition, fees, books, Harvard, right? Critics said that the fewer inmates, the cost will be falling, but they're not, because they kept the worst of the characters and they didn't lay anybody off. Does it surprise you that they're not laying off any state employees? They found that there were 3,500 too many Caltrans people. Did they lay anybody off? Nope. They actually are hiring more because of that new gas tax. They're hiring a bunch more. So says my retired Caltrans buddy that I have lunch with, who's an insider. Look out. Did you notice when you drive around Marysville, all those people walking around town not doing anything with little tags hung around their neck? That would be Caltrans people. So the costs are rising even as the number of prisoners leave. Hold that thought. I bet you thought it was going to be different than that. If you want to read a good article on a fat tax, look up on the territorialdispatch.biz. I wrote it last week. I proposed weighing everybody in once a year. We got to go get a smog check so we could weigh everybody in and then charge, what did I say, $100? Did I say $100? Anyway, I had it figured out where if a person was overweight by 100 pounds, that he'd have to pay about $1,500. Oh, I saw $15 a pound. That's it. So I figured out that a smoker smoking 1 pack a day, the taxes, they're paying almost $1,500 a year tax. Did you know that? And because they're having to pay for their insurance, right? They're having to pay for their health needs because we want free health. So they said, well, you can't just smoke and we pay all the health. We're going to charge you tax so you can pay for some of those costs yourself. So now they're saying the obesity is the new smoking problem of the 21st century. It's going to overtake smoking as the biggest health problem. So I thought, well, if they weighed everybody in and they charge you $15 a pound overweight, if you were 100 pounds overweight, that's $1,500. That's like a smoker of a pack a day. And then they could put that towards, but I argued in there, I said, I'm not against fat people because some people say they take more of the health insurance money, but they don't because they die earlier. So they take more money early on, but then they drop dead sooner. So they're off the payroll. And so they say that the majority of our health care dollars in a lifetime are spent in the last couple of years when you're 70, 80, 90, with all that extraordinary care, trying to do a heart replacement on me when I'm 80. Forget about it. Just let me go to be with the Lord. The Pope said there wasn't no hell, so we got it good now. Everything's one way, no split road. So anyway, we could solve this with this fat tax. I mean, we're taxing everything else. Fat tax. And so read all about it. And it's something to consider. I suggest even shutting down the health department because Yuba County Health does not get any better, and we're spending, I think, $8 million a year over in Yuba County on the health department, but the health never gets any better. So if the health department doesn't, it's like a doctor. You go to the doctor and he doesn't help you, but you have to pay him. Why go to the doctor? or they operate on you, and they always forget when they get in there, they forget what they were in there for, and they don't fix you. They just sew you back up, and right? So anyway, all right, we're going to call it a day. We got some sports guys coming. Do what you want to do after this, and we'll see you next week. We'll be live next week. Hey.